In this episode of a Developer Experience podcast, I talk with my friend Jon Allured. Jon and I were colleagues at Artsy and also BFFs, and from the start he wowed me with his habits and discipline. As you'll see in this episode, that might be a case of someone appearing to be a natural at something because they work very, very hard at it. Thanks for giving it a listen.
Okay, we got to get to it. I have a lot of stuff to say to you.
Okay, cool. So, hey, Jon.
Hey, Steve.
How
How's
are
it
you?
going? I'm great. Do you want me to introduce myself?
I would love for you to introduce yourself.
Okay. Hi, I'm Jon. I'm
Hey, it's
a
Jon.
senior engineer at Artsy. I tech lead the Grow team, and I've been there since 2017.
What's the Grow team?
The Grow team is a team that many companies have that they sort of talk about as being like top of funnel. So the kinds of things that type of team gets into is like new user signups, onboarding, even like SEO, stuff that like happens in the first week of your life as a user at the product shop you're working at, those kinds of things.
Sure. We're trying to like grow the audience, that kind of thing.
Totally. I made some more notes about myself.
Oh, tell me.
I've been a professional computer programmer since 2007.
How many years is that? 15?
That's like a long time. I didn't realize.
Do you feel old?
Well, I always feel old. I have a 6-year-old. But when I wrote that down did like the math, I was like, wow, I've been doing this a long time. I've also done both consultancies and product shops.
Sure.
Which I think is fun. I actually came to Artsy from a consultancy gig. And so one of the reasons why I was interested in getting at Artsy and staying at Artsy is experiencing that side that consultants don't always see of like writing some code and living with it for 4 years. And like, do my opinions about what's maintainable code change as I work at a product shop for a long time. So anyway, that's the kind of like pendulum swinging of my career. This time I'm on the product side.
Yeah, I had similar experience where I was like, I don't have to maintain anything I do. That's weird. And feels kind of dirty to just like hand it off and never have to deal with the problems I just created.
Totally. One more bit of context I'll throw in here is that I started on the web, and I've mostly done web in my career. Rails is kind of my specialty, but I've also done a lot of native iOS work in Swift. So that's kind of my corner of the world.
Awesome. Super important question about your personality. Did you Wordle today?
I did. Jess and I, my wife and I, send each other the score or whatever you call it, the thing that you can share at the end. And she got it, or no, I guess I got it first, and I got it in 4 today.
Nice job. Congratulations. Did she beat you?
I think she also got it in 4. It's funny when you compare the little pictures, hers is way different than mine. But yeah, we did it.
This is not a Wordle podcast.
Did you?
I did. I Wordled in 3 today. It was a good day.
And there was an X in today's puzzle.
There was.
That's rough.
It just came to me.
Can I tell you, one of my techniques is to, as I'm trying to construct a word as my guess, put X's for like the ones I'm not sure about as like placeholders, basically. So if I know the P's here and the thing is here, but I'm not sure what the letters in the middle, I'll type X's there so I can like visually get.
Oh, I like it.
What I'm trying to say, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So, but like today, when there actually was an X in the puzzle, that was kind of confusing.
Yeah, let's make a Wordle podcast.
Yeah,
another time.
Yeah.
So here's the thing that I want to ask you. One of the things the thing that we're going to talk about is about how you get things done. Maybe we put a pin in this for later, but maybe now is a good time to talk about it. You mentioned that you've done both consultancy and product work. Yeah. Are there any distinctions, any differences for you in terms of how you think about getting your stuff done in those two contexts?
Yeah, it's a great question. So one thing I'll say is that I've worked at a couple of product shops. I've only worked at one consultancy. And the one consultancy I worked at, I actually had 2 stints at. But the HashRocket was the name of the consultancy. And what's notable about HashRocket is they pair all the time. And so there are a few consultancies in this class where you sort of like show up at the beginning of your day, you're theoretically pairing for your 8 hours, and then off you go.
Mhm.
And so when it came to like getting things done, organizing your day, there was some like built-in structures there that just
Yeah.
are not what you experience at a product shop. You can pair all day at a product shop. It's just very rare.
Yeah.
We do some intermittent pairing at Artsy, sure, but that sort of feeling of like you're on a client project, and when you walk in the door to when you leave, you're kind of like trying to trying to build that client for that time. And so, yeah, like I say, it has a different feel.
Yeah. Just to note, you may have only done one consultancy gig, but you were there for a long time, right?
That's right.
Good amount of time. Yeah.
Yep. Yep.
Cool. Let's see. I think you kind of answered the question that I had here about the anything about you or your history that makes your systems of working notable, actually, with what we just talked about. But is there anything that you think that you might add to that?
One more thought here was just, and it's something we've casually talked about before, that it's funny or like surprising to me to be thought of as someone who's like good at getting things done,
Yeah.
because I still kind of am stuck in like thinking of myself as high school John, where I was absolutely not organized and like didn't get things done. And so I guess just to say that like I really had to work at this. This is not something that like came naturally or easy to me.
Yeah, and not only past tense, right?
Yeah.
I don't think I'm putting words into your mouth, but this isn't a past tense thing. This is like a constant thing, like a practice that you have to keep up. And like you're like, almost like you're running from something or something's chasing you, and you just need to outrun it every day.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like if I was left to my own devices, I would, and like didn't introspect or try to get better at these things, I would like have terrible habits.
Yeah.
Like so that's what I'm always running against. It's like I will choose the lazy, procrastinate, half-assed kind of thing. And so how do I set myself up to not do that and do the thing that I really want to do?
Yeah. I mean, this is a super good transition into how do you do that? Like, how do you keep yourself from choosing the lazy route?
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to articulate some of these things in like a unified way. So maybe some
Sure.
examples could be a
That'd be
way
great.
in here. So I'll say that my systems have evolved over time, even just in the few years that we've known each other. I'm currently on paper notebooks. I'm gonna hold one up to the screen here. It's by Field Notes. So this is a firm out of Chicago, the Chicagoland area. They make these really cute little notebooks. You can sign up for a subscription. I'm also not a paid uh, advertiser for Field Notes, but anyway, and they'll send you these cute, like really well produced notebooks. Um, and so I'm on them right now, and I just use them as like a way to jot down my to do lists, basically. Um, so I've alternated between OmniFocus, Todoist, like my own to do apps, and then I've also like done paper in my life, and I'm back to feeling like that's the right thing for me right now.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think that you are also, I think you also keep notes that are not related to like a to-do list, but notes about your day or maybe like journaling, um, keeping track of the problems that you've been working on. I think you also keep that digitally. Is that accurate?
Yeah, that's right. So I have this Field Notes notebook on my desk with a pencil to take quick notes, whatever. But I also keep what I call, because I like read a blog post about it once, my lab notebook. And
Sure.
lab notebook in the sense of like that scientific method, the like bench notebook if you're a chemist or something like that, and you're always jotting down the notes of kind of like the experiments you're working on. You just like have a running log, and that's kind of what I look at my lab notebook as. So this is a place where I might copy and paste in a snippet of code. Maybe I need something that I do a lot is like, hey John, here's a CSV file of some data, please update these records with this new data, whatever. And so I found in my career, it's really great to like jot down what you did, make even some notes for yourself. You never know when you're going to want to get that back.
Yeah, exactly. That's really nice to go back in time and read those notes. So your paper to-do list, is it really just a to-do list? Is that all it is? Do you use any like bullet journaling or anything fancy with that? Is it just like a list of things you have to do and you check them off?
So I make, well, there's a couple answers to this question. Like, so if you were to flip through this book, you'd see I make a page for each day, and I put it in 3 sections, like a T almost. So the top
Mhm.
of the T is like, when did I get up? Uh, what's the date? What time did I go to bed? Whatever, some like meta information. And then down the one side is like the things I'm going to start my day doing. And then the other
Mhm.
column is the things I'm going to end my day doing. This is something that is a good habit for me of like start and stop lists. So
Mhm.
for example, and it's a little redundant, but like literally I write a to-do list that includes things like get dressed, take a shower, take my medicine, you know, unload the dishwasher, lay out my kids' meds, whatever, like just those sort of things. I find it
Mhm.
quite energizing and like get me going if I'm crossing things off, even if they're things that are not super impactful. And then I want reminders at the end of the day. I want to remind myself to like, if I run the dishwasher every night before bed, boy, it's really setting myself and my family up for success.
Mhm.
The days that I don't do it, whatever, you know, lay out my clothes in the morning. So when I get out of that shower, I'm just putting my clothes on and off I go. So those kinds of observations about how I can make my life a little bit faster, a little bit easier, I try to codify in a list. So I do the
Sure.
same kind of thing for work. I want to, when I start my workday, I want to log my hours for the day. I want to, like sweep notifications, but I also want to like check my calendar. Am I prepared for all of the meetings I have today? Are there any
Mhm.
meetings I can cancel? So anyway, like all of these built up kind of like habits, I try to write them down.
Cool. Um, this start stop list is definitely a thing I've heard you talk a lot about. Now that you're on paper with these things, are you writing down the same things every single day for your start and
That's right.
stop list?
Yeah.
How do you keep track of them? Like, do you have a template that you use? You just like off the top of your head write them down every single day?
Um, I'll say this is kind of a new habit,
Mhm.
maybe in the last month or so. So I'm still kind of trying to figure it out. I think so far it's just been enough to just kind of like page back, look at the last day's list, and kind of take it from there.
Mhm.
Right. So I take that page to kind of have the snapshot of the day. But like if you were to flip through, you also just see like random lists, random notes.
Mhm.
One thing I do, I like to have a paper notebook when I'm talking with a candidate. You know, if I'm doing any kind of interviewing, and I
Mhm.
literally just like write down whatever comes to mind that stands out of what that person says, just to kind of help me remember what they're saying, feel engaged with that conversation, do more
Yeah.
active listening. So anyway, there's like a lot of like I don't hold myself to any kind of like only one kind of note can go in this notebook. All kinds of things. My kid likes to pick it up occasionally and draw a Pokemon that he's excited about that day. So it's kind of like anything goes
Yeah.
in there.
Cool. Do you have any sort of, I don't know, rules or boundaries around how things move from one list to the other? Like whether it's from your personal start stop list to your work start stop list, or like your either of your start stop lists to your digital lab notebook, that kind of thing, or vice versa.
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there are times when I pick up my physical notebook and I write my stand-up notes in there, but I do have a place in my lab notebook for it.
Mhm.
And I just try to like not be concerned about that.
Yeah, it
even
doesn't bother
even
you.
though even though it's not that it doesn't bother me, it's that it would bother me if I don't work to like try to not let it bother me. The like completionist in me, or like it's I could very easily go down the rabbit hole of like, oh, I can't do it. It's not in the right medium or something like
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Okay. One more thing I wanted to say here in terms of tools. I used to use Todoist. I think I mentioned that. And one of the things I miss from Todoist is recurring items to do.
Yeah.
Yeah. So
I
like
witnessed you experience this. This was like a
yeah,
bad time for you.
yeah. So right now I'm just using like Apple Calendar app and like going and in there and like making recurring meetings basically.
Mhm.
I don't love this, but I'm trying it out. I
Um,
haven't quite figured out recurring things.
do you think it's better so far than when you were trying Todoist? Does it feel like an improvement?
It felt like recurring things were the only thing I was going to Todoist for. And so in that sense, I just didn't
Mm.
open the app enough. Like
Yep.
when it comes to recurring things, it has to be built into your existing tools that you're using every day, or you could easily miss it.
Got it. I think I maybe misunderstood. When you were trying out Todoist, uh, and I think you mentioned Omni also.
OmniFocus? Yeah.
OmniFocus. Yes, thank you. I was going to say Omni off. I'm like, no, this doesn't have anything to do with authentication. Um, but so when you were when you were trying to use those tools, were you still also using your paper notebook to
No, this is
track?
when I was all digital.
Okay, you were all digital. Okay, okay,
When I made the move to go to paper, I pretty quickly was like, well, I'm just never going to open Todoist again.
yeah.
But again, so then what am I going to do with recurring things? And the calendar was the only thing I could think of. It was like already kind of built into my systems because
Yeah,
I'm already having to look at that calendar all the time.
yeah, for sure. Um, so it sounds like you spend a lot of time refining things and like in making changes. How do you build in that time, or how do you think about that time?
I'm smiling because this is a habit that I shared with you after you started working at Artsy, and I don't think it ever really landed for you. But so
No.
I this is another one like you like bump into it on the internet. This idea of you should be sharpening your tools as a software engineering craftsman, and I mostly think that craftsman stuff is a bunch of horseshit. But on this one point, I agree with that movement that like it's important to be good at the sort of almost like the meta. So I'm talking about like being good at Git, being good in your text editor. And for me, that includes like setting aside, like literally going to my work calendar and putting an hour aside every Monday for an appointment called Sharpen. So what this sharpen hour is for me is a couple things. One thing that's just routine, which is I run a few commands in my terminal to do things like upgrade my package manager. So for me, that's Brew to
Mhm.
upgrade some other like command line tools to upgrade Vim and all my Vim plugins. I do things like I empty my screenshots folder, I clean up my desktop, I empty my like the trash can, you know, in the dock. It's
Mhm.
like some file management. I like check for free disk space on my machine to make sure I'm not almost running out of disk space.
It's like
Whatever, like
hygiene stuff.
hygiene stuff, totally.
Yeah.
Um, and then also I have a list of like tasks I have been maybe collecting or picking up. So if I observe something that could be improved about the way I work, and I don't have time in that moment to address it, what I'll
Mhm.
likely do is go to my .files repo on GitHub and open an issue. And then I'll sweep those issues during my sharpen time looking for things to improve.
What is your .files repo? Can you just give like a quick summary of what that is?
Yeah, so .files is I don't even know how it's like a mechanism, a what would you call it? It's like a thing that a lot of Unix
Kind of
tools
a
use.
standard?
It's a standard. That's a great way of saying it. It's a standard that many Unix tools use to like set aside your configuration. So, for example, if you were to open up your Apple laptop and look in your home folder, you'd find a file that starts with a dot. That's like .bash rc, for example. So Bash, the like shell can be configured using this file, and you can put all kinds of little goodies in there.
Mhm.
Git's another common one. So there's a git config file, and in there you can add aliases and tweak its settings any way you want. So a .files repo is a collection of these kinds of .files all in one place, so that were you to throw your laptop out the window, get another one, you could have it configured just to your specifications pretty quick. And so that's just kind of like the home for my ideas around like sharpening my tools. It's already where I'm thinking about tinkering with them. And so it's pretty natural to go there and add some kind of like, hey, see if you can figure out how to, I don't know, like do this kind of thing and get, I'm like, no, I'm like
Sure.
observing that I'm always, or like a good one was when we switched. So we had a new engineer start and advocate for different kinds of formatting in our pull requests on GitHub. And I was
Mhm.
like, I know I can script this for myself so I don't have to do a lot of typing like in the GitHub, .com interface, but instead all at the command line. So like wrote myself some tools around starting pull requests, opening them with certain templates,
Right.
certain bits filled in.
Right. So you definitely use this sharpening time to do the technical types of refinement to your tools and processes. Do you also use that sharpening time to do something like, say, Todoist isn't working for me, I'm going to scrap this and start with like a notebook, and what would that look like for me? Or
Yeah, that would
how
be
do you just make that decision to just like not do it anymore, and when do you figure out what you're going to do next?
yeah, that I mean, I think that would be fine things to occur during sharpened time. That's not how I've used it, but
Yeah.
like these kind of happen a little more organically than that.
Yeah.
Um, I wanted like one barrier for Todoist was like it wasn't helping me organize my personal life because I was only using it for work. And so
Hmm.
I like what I wanted to move towards was something that was like just organize myself like all over the place, stop trying to have any kind of separation between church and state in that regard. And
Hmm.
so this has kind of helped me achieve that, I guess. I had another thought here. Another way I kind of keep this all organized for myself is this thing I like to say where I only work in my office and I only work in my office. So to say I don't work anywhere else in my house, and when I'm in my office, I don't play video games. You know what I mean? So it's like I try to only work in my office, and when I'm in my office, only do work.
Yeah. You work remotely. You have worked remotely at Artsy for I don't know how many
Since
years.
the
5
beginning.
years?
Yeah.
Is it 5 years?
I've
Is that what
I've
you
been
just
working
said?
remotely since 2015.
Okay. Um, so is that, I imagine that that's an important part. Like, in the last couple of years, we've all read millions of articles about what are the most important things about being remote if you've never done it before.
Yeah.
Um, is that really important to you, having that distinction, that separation between work and
It's
home?
key. It's sort of like the habit that help that like makes it all work for me. I
Yeah.
mentioned some things about my personal life, including I have a wife and a kid, and I just like it would be irresponsible for me to do anything other than what I just described because it's just too easy for me to make poor choices that would impact
Yeah.
their seeing their dad or seeing their husband. Um, and so, one other thing I'll call out here is that I actually made a little app to help myself track my time and keep track of it. So this is like I I call up the app, I put in when I start, when I stop, and then I'll track like PTO and whatever else.
Mhm.
And my goal is to hit 40 hours even every week. And so this again is like building up some more habits around okay, I'm only going to work when I'm in my office and I'm trying to hit 40 hours a week and kind of having those constraints just be like habits that make me feel good like I feel good when
Mhm.
I accomplish those things has been a good foundation to build some of this stuff like on top of
Yeah.
that.
So, John, like when you say that you were surprised that people think of you as being very on top of your shit, like I don't know how you can be surprised. I mean, obviously, whatever, but that's why people think that you're on top of your shit, is because you are so structured and so organized with that stuff, and you're like the only person that maybe has those structures in place and sticks to them.
Yeah, this is one that I might want to touch on a little bit with you just that like you know I really do a very good job with 40 and like literally sticking to 40 hours a week. I have some passion there for a reason I'm not quite sure I can articulate. But like even this notebook, like I skipped a few days recently. Like I just like didn't feel like doing that thing at the beginning of the day where I make the thing. Um, I didn't really do sharpening this week. I mean, we had yesterday off, whatever. Like,
Sure.
and I have no guilt about it. Like, I just
Sure.
don't like. I just let it bounce right off of me. That
Yeah.
I set up systems. I set up all this stuff, and I have some things that I'm just for whatever reason really click with me, and I do consistently, and others that I don't, and I just like do not give myself a hard time about it.
So I think the thing that, like, I love the idea of the guilt there, or the lack of guilt. And like you and I have talked about many times about guilt and how
Sure.
it tends to rule the things that we do. Um, but I think the part that's more impressive to me than the fact that you don't have guilt about it is that you just get back on the wagon so quickly and easily. You know what I mean? For me personally, if I have if I go about 3 days without doing something that I know is important to, my mental health and the processes that keep me from falling apart, like it tends to snowball.
Sure.
And day 4 is worse, and day 5 is really bad. And by like day
Yeah.
7, I'm like, I don't know what's going on in my life, and it's awful. Everything's awful, and I hate this, and I don't know why. And I have to do some, I've kind of changed. I'm a little up and down with how much I follow this, but I've tried to give myself like a guidebook for getting myself out of these situations.
Yeah.
Um, and if I don't like actually take some intentional time to consciously think about what are the things that I'm not doing that I should be doing, it's really hard for me to get back to them.
Yeah, I don't have a good antidote for this, and I definitely empathize with it. Um,
Mhm.
I think for me, it's like those times when I maybe don't follow my patterns or my systems the way I would like to. It's like, oh, that's the real me shining through,
Yeah.
and like I just don't feel bad about it. It's just like, well, he got through a little bit,
Hmm.
like he's gonna do that. he's he's
Yeah.
he's one of those little fuckers, and you just gotta try to, and then you know honestly, like a good night's sleep, waking up, taking a shower, you know what I mean? Like get
Hmm.
just like the so one of my wife's books talks about keystone events. Like there are
Hmm.
things you can do during your day that if you do them, it just sets you up to kind of keep making the right choices, to keep doing the things that are like good for yourself. So
Yeah.
I just can, if I can just hit a few of those keystones, then I find that it all kind of starts lining up.
Sure. Um, Couple things. What keystone events? It sounds like showering is one of them for you for
It's
sure.
such a like
Dishes,
a
maybe.
it's such an oddball thing to say, but like, yeah, literally, if I wake up and like roll out of bed and then hit the shower immediately, it just
Yeah,
sets the tone of my whole day.
yeah, that makes sense. I wonder, is this where I've heard people say and read things about like if you make your bed every morning,
Sure.
like it sets the tone for your day, or it's a win or whatever. I wonder if if that's the same thing. If
I think
that's
there's
just
something
saying
there.
that making the bed is your keystone event.
Yeah, it's something has gotten internalized here where if I
Yeah.
do that one habit, I see myself just starting to kind of like, okay, then I will probably eat breakfast at the right time. I'll make my
Hmm.
coffee, and then the dominoes of just like, okay, I'm falling into the pattern of the things that are familiar and the things that work best for me. Um, so if the prior day I didn't do some of those things and I got myself kind of off track, um, you know, hopefully I can go to bed at a decent hour and then wake up at a decent hour and get back on track.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm just in my head trying to think about what my keystone events would be, and I don't have much other than getting a workout in, and
Maybe that's yours.
I feel like that's maybe some of it is a keystone event, and some of it is also, um, I don't know, the effects of the workout are so
Sure.
important, so valuable and important to me that maybe that just is what a keystone event is, but uh, I feel like there's an energy that
It's like
it
a
sets.
keystone plus plus.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, for sure. It's got like some sort of modifier on it. Yeah.
Totally.
The other thing I wanted to just say is back to the guilt conversation. I was having trouble seeing this guilt as part of starting things back up.
Mm.
But I don't know, the way that you described it, it does make sense that whenever I do get in that situation where I am starting to snowball a little bit and things are getting a little bit bad, it's not like I'm just saying to myself, oh, I need to get back on the wagon. It's like, I need to get back on. I'm falling off. I always do this. I'm awful.
Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah,
The
yeah. So that's
judgment, it
interesting.
comes so
That's going to
quick.
be something for me to think about. Yeah. Yeah. That's cool.
You know, again, like thinking about how we get things done. Um, I'm just very interested in being fast. So this
Sure.
this like uh, impacts how I work and how I organize my day in a couple ways. One of the things I think about when I think about speed is like, um, I've really tuned my dev environment. So
Mhm.
I've been a loyal Vim user since 2011. I'm really all in on it. I don't hope, I mean, I hope I will be able to continue to just use Vim forever. I think there's a big value in picking an editor. It doesn't matter if it's Vim or whatever you love, and just like really getting expertly good at it.
Yeah.
Um, the other tool that I would categorize this way is Tmux. So this is like a session, a tool that makes a terminal session just the way you want. You can disconnect and reconnect, so it's persistent in a way that you could actually even quit your terminal program and it would still be hanging out there for you to resume.
Mhm.
So anyway, like getting extremely good at some of those tools, I have found really pays off, so that when I'm, maybe someone's having experiencing a bug, or there's an incident that's being experienced, I can be interrupted. I can switch into a different kind of problem space because I maybe have that already booted up in Tmux, and I'm right back where I was. I can help that person and then return to my work. So it's actually
Mm.
helps with interruption for me.
That's
That
interesting.
Yeah, like it's like the world stopped on this train of thought, and I was able to just like move to this other train of thought, work on that, and come right back to that first train of thought. Anyway, it's not that my tools are the only tools that allow this, but
Sure.
you should strive for tools that help you do that.
Yeah, definitely. Um, is that a thing that happens to you often? Those interruptions?
Yeah, I mean, definitely. My days as a tech lead include lots of meetings. So, if nothing else, I'm often being interrupted by meetings. But
Mhm.
if you add in, pairing requests, or just the normal activities that occur during the day, maybe dipping into Slack, and so that's yeah, interruptions are part of life.
You're a tech lead. That's the job, is
Yeah.
being interrupted.
But so that's one way you can think about fast. Other things include, like, I'm pretty hooked on a task launcher called Alfred. There are many such tools. In like, maybe the first thing you learn about these kinds of tools is that you can hit a hotkey, get a prompt, and then you can launch an application by typing its
Mhm.
name. But they are often quite a bit more customizable. For instance, you probably have, there are like plugins often, and maybe you can get a plugin for Jira, so you can summon your Jira ticket a little faster, or you can
Mhm.
get a plugin for GitHub and get to a GitHub issue faster. So I'm always thinking about, like, how can I set myself up to be able to do those kind of, those tasks we do all day every day, but do them with like fewer keystrokes, which is, I think, kind of a Vim mentality applied to other
Yeah,
tools.
definitely.
Yeah.
But I don't think it's wrong. I mean, that's obviously not whatever editor is fine. But I think that there is value in the keystrokes
Sure.
versus dragging your mouse across the screen. And like I think, the amount of time that it takes you to your point about speed, the amount of time it takes you to remember the command, like commands option C or whatever it is that you're trying to do, and hit those on your keyboard versus, oh, I need to move my mouse cursor over to this part and click on this thing and click on this other thing. I mean, that's like, not only is it an amount of time that it takes you to do that thing, but it's also more of a distraction, and you're now thinking about, where is my mouse going, instead of what is the activity that I'm trying to do.
Yeah. So, I mean, another way of saying this is like getting like closing the gap between thought and action. So like, some people
Mhm.
talk
Yeah,
about
yeah.
this experience of using Vim as like being able to move through your code like at the speed of thought. and
Yeah.
and so that's maybe, no, that's definitely hyperbolic. but but like striving for that kind of workflow, again, whether it's Vim or your preferred editor or whatever the tool is. I mean, Figma, Sketch, it doesn't matter what the tool is. What matters is
Yeah.
it's like kind of like having that mindset of like, how can I get to a point where the gap between my thoughts and the thing I'm trying to accomplish, how can I close
Mhm.
that gap?
Yeah, for sure. It's reminding me of the conversation about, oh, I'm not going to remember the phrases. There's like the two types of code. HTML is declarative versus imperative. Declarative
Sure.
versus imperative code. So like, um the declarative of just saying, I want to copy this line versus the imperative of like, I'm going to drag the cursor over here, click on this thing, copy the line,
Yeah.
which is kind of, I don't know, maybe a stretch, but
I see where you're
it
headed
always
with it.
comes back to code.
So another couple of thoughts on this topic are like, don't repeat yourself as it applies to like shell commands. So for example, there's a very long command we issue to run a production Rails console on some of our apps. It includes a couple of different flags. There's like a lot to remember. You should, I think, notice that it's a awkward command to type, and then probably try to figure out how to type it in fewer keystrokes, or at the very least, get good at Control R. So this is like in a command prompt, you can hit Control R and it'll like search your history as you start typing keystrokes for a command that matches. There's even an improved experience called FZF that I would encourage people to check out, where it will do fuzzy finding through your history. So anyway, the same idea of like, what can I do to move myself closer to, I know I've typed a command recently that would accomplish this goal. I'm not going to type it again. I'm not going to try to futz with remembering it. I'm going to try to summon it from my history. I do the same thing with Alfred, because Alfred has a clipboard history manager. I would encourage everyone to get yourself into clipboard history management, because it's such a superpower of, every time I copy anything, it's going into this queue, and the password managers work, so you're not going to have anything sensitive in there. But anyway, everything from like IDs of users that I'm investigating, an artist's ID, the slug, a URL to a like a docs site, whatever. All that's in my history, and with a few simple keystrokes, I can probably find it again.
And your sharpening time is like the time that you would notice that you're doing these things over and over, and there's improvements that you can make to it.
Exactly.
I want to jump back a little bit.
Yeah.
When we were talking about interruptions, and you talked about how your tools enable you to basically jump away from what you're doing and then jump back to it more quickly and easily. How do you keep breadcrumbs to know where you were? You know what I mean? Like, aside from just the editor comes up, you were in a train of thought. Is there anything that you do there?
Yeah, I mean, for the case where it was really like, stop the world, I need to switch gears and do something, you don't necessarily have the benefit of leaving yourself those breadcrumbs. So sometimes you're just going to have to kind of reboot your brain. And there's maybe some tricks there, but when I do have an opportunity to leave myself breadcrumbs, I do have a couple tricks. One of them is leaving yourself a red test. One of the best ways you can boot yourself back up when you return to a topic or a task or whatever you want to call it is by typing out what like the next step would be in a test.
And so is that test is like failing at that point?
Right.
Because you haven't actually made that part pass yet.
Yeah, and it can even be kind of a horseshit test. But if I see some red, my brain just starts wanting to complete it. It wants to start, get it to go green. And so it kind of puts me back right into that problem-solving mode. And so if I can articulate the problem, even if, again, the test isn't perfect, that's often a great way to kind of jumpstart the like rebooting of the context into my brain.
Yeah, for sure.
Other things we can do to kind of get ourselves back into the frame of mind, go back to the ticket you're working on and like read it again. If there's like a Slack thread that caused you to do the thing, go back and just like start from the top and read that Slack thread. These are great ways to just like use reading as a way to like, and so because that's such a great thing to do, I often try to leave myself notes again in my lab notebook. So hopefully when I was interrupted, I had a note maybe from a couple minutes ago, giving myself some idea of what I was just thinking or what I was just doing.
Yeah. Kind of mixing that with the failing test approach, a thing that I often find myself doing and I don't think about it at all, is like literally just in my code, just writing a sentence, plain English. Steve, you are going to do this next. And it
Yeah.
totally doesn't compile. It's
Nope.
garbage, but it tells me exactly what I was going to do, which is kind of nice.
Sometimes I'll write like some pseudocode. So like
Yeah.
if, and then like
Mhm.
write some English words just as like a way to kind of, again, get myself back into some kind of headspace.
For sure. I definitely think it's important to be intentional when you do have to jump over to something else so that you do get back in there. Because that's the hardest part for me is
Yeah.
the spin up time. Ramp
Yeah.
up time is always like it kills me in everything.
Yeah.
How are we doing? Are there other things that you want to cover?
Let's keep going on interruptions and distractions. So there's
Okay.
one more thing, and this is something that actually Artsy does for us. So on Wednesdays at Artsy in the afternoon, we have something that we kind of call like heads down time, and
Mhm.
so the permission that we give ourselves is on Wednesday afternoons, you should quit Slack, you should quit email, and you should work on something heads down and not, and like there's no expectation, even hopefully of ourselves, that we're going to be
Mhm.
like super responsive. So another technique that I'm using to keep myself, you know, uh, on task or whatever is like trying to, even on like on a Monday, I'll start thinking of like, okay, what am I going to work on Wednesday afternoon? I'll start trying to like collect tasks. I'll try to start
Sure.
thinking about like what's the hardest thing I need to think about with like, uninterrupted focus, and like kind of try to tee it up for a Wednesday. So if I think, oh, this problem is a good problem for me to think about on this Wednesday and like really try to work
Mhm.
on, do I have any block? It's like, is there any questions I have? Try to ask those Monday, Tuesday. So when it comes time for Wednesday, I've kind of got all the things I need and I can just really start digging into it.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. It's interesting. I hadn't really thought of it as a time where it was okay to turn off Slack. I've never done it on a Wednesday. I tend to ignore it, but I tend to ignore Slack pretty easily anyways. I set my notifications such that they don't really
That's cool.
it's not a push, it's a pull. Like when I have time to be updated, I'll go be updated.
Yeah.
But for the most part, not there aren't a lot of notifications that make their way through where I'm gonna be interrupted with whatever it is that I'm doing.
That's great, and I wish I had more discipline there. I definitely am susceptible to Slack taking over.
Yeah,
Um, yeah,
it's pretty easy to do for sure.
yeah. That's what I want to say about that one.
Are there any other things that you wanted to touch on that we haven't touched on?
Looking, I do have a timer on my desk that I use in a Pomodoro sense of
Sure.
like literally having a physical object, and it's kind of cool because it has like as you spin
Yeah,
it
it's the old like
around, it's
red pie
dialed.
chart timer.
Yeah,
Yep.
exactly. So there's like a physical red thing that I see in kind of the corner of my eye that like shrinks as my timer is about to expire, and then just gonna silence it so it doesn't go off. Um, I don't always do Pomodoro. It's not always right for like what I'm working on or whatever, but I do reach for that.
Sure. When you do the Pomodoro, do you pretty much just do the time boxes? 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, or do you also start to look at it more holistically, like tracking interruptions and trying to figure out, making changes to your flow or whatever to minimize those interruptions?
It's a good question. I guess now that you're forcing me to think about it, I think what I would do is like put on do not disturb in Mac OS where
Sure.
like all the notifications would be turned off so that like I'm trying to basically say I'm like all basically quitting everything and focusing on a task for those minutes, and then
Yeah.
I would like look back if I need to when
Cool.
the timer goes off.
One of the people that I've talked to for this show already talked about how he's pretty deep into Pomodoro, where like he breaks his day down in terms of Pomodoros and thinks like I have these things. It's going to take me 3 Pomodoros to do this, and I'm
Gotcha.
going to plan it for these 3 Pomodoros in the morning. Is that anything that you do?
No, I most engineers, I have a complicated relationship with the tasks I have and like time and like how much time they should take.
Yeah.
Um, and I guess what I mean by that is like it's like it's done when I say it's done. A little bit, you know, like I hold myself to a pretty high standard in terms of quality. Um, I try to have good discipline around like knowing when the refactoring is complete. We've talked about this a ton of times, but like, you know, I don't give myself like deadlines like that. Like
Sure.
that would be something I would never be able to tolerate.
It comes back to the guilt of
Yeah.
the self-induced guilt of just feeling bad because something's taking long.
And I mean, I'm certainly not immune to that. I definitely feel, you know, I'm on the third day of that Gravity PR
Yeah.
refactor that I'm working on. Yeah, like I don't feel great about it, but like I know it's the right thing to do. And like I try to include people, like bring people into my head.
Yeah.
So I'm not, you know, like in the cave and I will bring back the code finished so that I'm checking my assumptions. I'm hearing people say to me, yeah, no, I see why you're choosing this and I agree with you or whatever.
Yeah, I think the longer it goes on, the more important it becomes to verbalize and
Yeah.
socialize your status and what you're doing and where you're at. But also, the harder it becomes to
Yeah.
socialize and verbalize that stuff because you're like, I feel
And
like an idiot.
and like honestly, this is the exception. That for me anyway. What I'm describing is the exception. Most of the time, my tasks are on the hour to half a day kind of timeline. It's rare I work on a thing for multiple days.
Sure.
That's just where I'm at these days.
Yep. If there's anything that you would add in regards to like the emotional, psychological effects of this kind of stuff, that would be great to hear anything you have there. If you haven't already, I mean, we've like that's been sprinkled in all over the place. But if there was anything specific,
Yeah, I mean, I feel like when the system is working well, when I feel like I'm being efficient and effective, I just feel happy. Like it makes me
Mhm.
feel self-actualized, you know. Um, and so that can be a good motivator to keep doing it. And I just try to not beat myself up when I'm not. You know, it's like I
Yeah.
try to not let the opposite get to me. I try to just get back to that good feeling. And this is something that I've struggled with for like throughout my career, but that like kind of holding the two in your head simultaneously of like I'm not a bad person if I don't do this, but when I do this, I'm a good person. You know, it's like,
Yeah, yeah,
yeah, trying to hold those two together is sometimes challenging.
yeah,
Um,
for sure.
I had two more points.
Okay.
One, and they're both maybe a little minor. One is I have to have so Steve knows that I'm a Rubik's Cube fan, and it's not actually because I like solving the Rubik's Cube. It's that I need something in my hands to
Yeah.
take away my physical fidgetiness so that I can focus on you. So you know that I'm actually really listening to you when you hear that Rubik's Cube going,
Yeah, exactly.
because then that means that I'm occupying my physical form and my mental energy can be directed towards what you're saying. For those of you that find that that's true, try to find something physical to do. Steve, you've shared a habit about coloring.
Yeah, that was working for me for a while. I
Yeah,
currently don't have a coloring book here, but this topic keeps coming up
yeah,
this week. I mean, I've talked about it with my daughter, who has talked about bringing a fidget cube to school
yeah.
so that she can focus on the teacher more. Um, I I had this exact conversation yesterday, or maybe it might have been Friday,
Mm,
with a couple other engineers about like I've what I've been doing lately is just like especially when I'm in a meeting that I have a hard time focusing on and I'm not doing a lot of talking, I'm mostly listening,
yeah,
is just like getting up, walking around and doing things around the house with my hands, whether that's washing dishes or like, working on my bike or putting stuff away. Um, and listening, and I find
yeah.
myself actually listening better in
Right.
those cases. To the people I was talking to, like they were talking about playing guitar with their fingers, or just all sorts of things. I fidget like crazy, but
Yeah, I need
if
it.
I'm not fidgeting, I'm not listening.
Right. I'm barely hanging on.
Yeah, for sure.
um, I purchased a standing desk during the pandemic, and that's been actually pretty helpful too. I
Cool.
find that I can do a lot better paying attention when I'm not like slouching and sitting, and
Yeah,
I don't know,
you're a
something
little more
about standing.
active.
Yeah,
Hmm.
it doesn't seem like it'd be that much of a difference I'm telling you, it's a big difference.
Yeah, agreed.
One more thing I want to plug here is a book called Tiny Habits. This is just another one of those self-help books. This one really landed for me, though. He takes a pretty cool approach where you're like designing your life. That really landed for me. If you're interested, you should check it out.
Cool. Yeah, I'll definitely dig that one up and put it in notes. This is awesome.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening to this episode of A Developer Experience Podcast. And thanks to my guest, Jon Allured. Love you, buddy. Jon's website is jonallured.com. That's JONALLURED. If you like the show, support it at the podcast home, anchor.fm/a-developer-experience. I'm Steve Hicks. Check stephenhicks.me/where to find me on the internet. Take care, friends.
Always be recording. How's my gain?
I don't know. Say something loud.
Hello, hello, hello.
You're great.
Okay.
I don't know how you do that.
Huh?
I don't know how you do that.
Have good gain?
Yeah.
Josh told me to turn this knob down, and so I just did it. And then I had good gain.
Sick gain.
Sick gain.